All right, heading out on track for what will probably be my last laps ever in a Nissan GTR R35, at least certainly as a new car. Welcome to Japan, welcome to Fuji Speedway, and welcome to the R35 flavor of the GTR Nismo. This is the final rendition of the R35 that we're going to get in the US. An absolute icon of motoring, a car that's had a huge impact on the global motorsport industry and the overall automotive industry too. Marks the end of the road. We're going to go to Nismofest, going to give you a quick tour around a celebration of all things Nissan performance, and then yes, we're going to hit the track in this for a final goodbye to the R35. Fuji Speedway is, of course, named for Fuji-san, who on this beautifully clear day was overlooking all the action at the circuit, which included some amazing historic Nissans running at speed. Fuji Speedway is the home of Nismofest, an annual celebration of all things Nissan motorsport, which this year celebrated its 40th anniversary, and the crowds were huge. There was a mix of modern and classic machines, like this 1991 Pulsar GTI-R driven by Stig Blomqvist in the 1991 Safari Rally. And of course, there were endless Super GT racers from all different generations. The highlight for me, though, was a pair of famous GTRs, one being this iconic Calsonic R32, which dominated Japanese sports car racing in the early 90s, and also dominated my time playing it in Gran Turismo. Another was this bright yellow 400R GTR R33, which ran Pikes Peak here in the US in 1998. Even the electric Nissan Ariya Nismo Edition got in on the fun with some Super GT drivers acting as chauffeurs, taking me for some quiet hot laps out on the track while we got past us. Formula E going by, getting a little loose even. Wow. It's safe to say, though, that the finest machines were out in the parking lot, like this 1972 Skyline Van Deluxe, which was Nissan's term for a wagon back in those days. And the tuners were on full display, a highlight being this full carbon wide-body R32 from Tuner Garage Active. It weighs 200 pounds less than a standard R32, and that's despite having a turbocharger so big you can see it from orbit. I personally love the R32. If I were going to buy a GTR today, that's probably the generation I would choose, and not just for financial considerations, but of course I was out there to spend some final time with the R35, the current generation of the GTR, which, believe it or not, has been on the market for 17 years now. But its legacy dates back even further than that. It debuted as a concept at the Tokyo Motor Show in 2001, but it was really Gran Turismo concept for the PlayStation 2 that made it famous. It was one of the hero cars in that game, and a few years later in Gran Turismo 5 Prologue, before debuting, still camouflaged in Gran Turismo 5, meaning millions of people got to drive that car before it even really was a car. The R35 debuted properly in 2007 at the Tokyo Motor Show, a radical new interpretation of the GTR with a radical new drivetrain consisting of a rear-mounted transaxle transmission. To get the car's trademark all-wheel drive, that meant it needed an extra drive shaft to send power from the rear back up to the front differential. It even had a nod back to Gran Turismo with some digital gauges developed by Polyphony Digital. I can't begin to tell you how futuristic and advanced that was back in 2007. So much tech that many automotive journalists at the time labeled this thing as more video game than race car. But yet here we are with a generation of Ferraris and Lamborghinis and everything else, all lousy with advanced all-wheel drive systems, next-gen traction and stability control, and plenty of virtual gauges to boot. All of that was ushered in by the R35, which it was finally time for me to drive. All right, heading out on track for what will probably be my last laps ever in a Nissan GTR R35, at least certainly as a new car. So we're out here at Fuji Speedway, and I'm going to wrap things up with a couple laps in the R35 Nismo. Now, just don't want to set expectations here. They've not been letting us go particularly quickly out here today, so it's going to be more like a dramatic parade lap. Don't expect too much histrionics out here, but still, this is a great opportunity to a final send-off for this car that's been so significant to the industry. I was just talking with Tamura-san, the longtime GTR engineer, really responsible for this car, who's now taken on more of a... One moment. Tamura-san has taken on more of a spiritual advisor role in Nissan almost these days. And he said that this car is very representative of what will be the final GTR Nismo that will come to the United States, and will be ultimately the final GTR Nismo here in the Japanese market as well. And even though we're still not really going anywhere near 1010s, this thing still feels great out here. When this GTR first launched all those years ago, it immediately got a reputation as being so far removed with so many advanced control systems and stability control, traction control, everything else, that it was labeled as kind of being numb by a lot of people, that you felt too removed from the road. But it's funny now, driving this car, which has evolved quite a bit since then, but it's still the same basic platform. Now it actually feels kind of raw and good compared to a lot of the other modern supercars. You know, the entire industry has moved to a point where this GTR defines things in terms of control system, software, driver assistance. This car really defined the template. And everybody else has now moved to this point where Ferraris and Lamborghinis and everybody else offer much the same sort of all-wheel drive control systems and software that really kind of pioneered here. And as we've moved through those decades since then, those more modern cars actually feel far more removed than this one. This car actually feels really nice. The steering on it's a little bit old school in a lot of ways, but there's so much great feeling. I can feel the changes in the grip levels in different corners. That hairpin in particular, the asphalt's really torn up. I can feel it through the steering here, and most modern cars, you just can't do that anymore. And this being, of course, the Nismo edition means they've ripped all of the sound deadening material out and everything else to create what is a really beautiful experience. Tamura-san told me that the project codename for this was TM, Trend Maker. They knew at the beginning that this was going to be a really significant car, and they're absolutely right. That's it. They're throwing the checkered flag. That's all the time that I get here in the GTR Nismo. I feel so incredibly privileged to have been in this car, and what can I say? I'm going to miss it. Bye-bye, Godzilla.